Thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Irfan Khan. I'm the head of SAP's HANA Database Analytics organization. It's been a while since I was able to engage with the community and the SAP mentors who I have a great fondness and affinity to, right, over the years. And today I'm really pleased to introduce Frank Schuler, who will be one of our guests today, and I'll be getting into a conversation with him in just a moment. The opportunity here is for us to hear both from Frank in terms of what his current experiences are, but more importantly, also for us to be able to relay to you what the opportunities are for you to continue to engage with us as well. So Frank, welcome today and great to have you here today.
Thank you, Irfan. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump straight into this. So my first question to you is, opportunities come like this very rarely, right? For us to be able to meet one-on-one. Now, of course, in this more virtual world, it becomes a little bit easier, right? But your career journey has been very interesting. You certainly have been quite an international and global citizen, starting off in Germany, going to Florida, and you certainly accumulated quite a lot of the experiences. Maybe you can just share with us a little bit behind the background in terms of how is it that you came to be in enterprise architecture. Very, very, great opportunity for us to be able to get into that discussion in a moment. But just how did you arrive at the enterprise architecture role?
Yeah, thank you, Irfan. Good question. I mean, that has been a bit of a journey, so I cut it short. I wanted to study computer science with economics because I always thought these two go hand in hand really nicely. And the University of Passau was one of 3 in Germany that offered that combination. So I had a limited choice and I went to Passau and I liked it very much. Also, the city I've been born in, close to Stuttgart, was the European headquarters. So I had a lot of American friends. So when it came to finishing the bachelor's degree, I applied for a scholarship to study in the US and used that opportunity to meet some of my friends that had been moved over because that's what they usually do after a couple of years. And I liked it because it was very different from studying in Germany. German studying was very scientific and in the US was very much hands-on with COBOL courses. Highly sophisticated Excel. I liked that a lot. And then I went back and I finished my master's degree and got employed by one of the big IS implementation companies nowadays. And yeah, I venued into first IT architecture and from there to enterprise architecture. And that is what I wanted to do because that combines, IT with economics. So I'm quite happy in that space.
Well, that's super. That's super.
Yeah, I mean, you had a very interesting career path too, right? I mean, from development into sales and now deep into technology. What motivated you to do that, and how did that go?
Yeah, from my point of view, it's been quite a blessing, right? To maybe I've done something that's quite unusual in our industry, right? Which is stay with one employer pretty much from university. So I joined Sybase in the early 90s, pretty much straight after having graduated. I was there for a total of 18 years. That first chapter I would consider to be more deep in product. And then the second chapter arrived when I was part of the acquisition that was, of course, SAP acquiring Sybase. And then, 18 years into a career, wondering, maybe there's a big, bold world out there. What am I going to try? And then fortunately for me, SAP had tremendous opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. And I went down the go-to-market route initially and then into sales. And for 6 years of the last 10, I was running global sales. And more importantly, the portfolio was technology related. Of course, it's database analytics, planning, etc. So I still was definitely my sweet spot. But then more recently, the opportunity presented itself to go back to product again. So I couldn't be happier. For me, firstly, my heart has always been in product and in the data and the analytics portfolio. And there's so much going on in this space. And maybe just from your perspective, I know you in the organization that you work for today, and particularly the backdrop of we're dealing with right now with the pandemic. We're seeing, for example, gas prices fluctuating every single day. And I know the company you work for does quite a lot of modeling in this space. So maybe you can just describe a little bit about your role in the current organization and what technologies, if any, in particular, right, are of interest to you right now, and how you sort of driving the future growth, right, from the organizational perspective.
Yeah, you're right. It's interesting times in the gas market. So my role is a senior technology architect, and I'm leading our technical delivery team. And I'm involved in a lot of projects. And one of those is where we have been using artificial intelligence for a while, and that is estimating gas demand. Because for the gas network, and that's a bit technical and don't really need to know this, but you can't have too few gas because you don't want the people don't have gas, right? But you can't have too much gas either. It has to be balanced all the time. And we have been using relatively sophisticated artificial intelligence algorithms for years to estimate this on a daily basis, including, weather data, seasonal data. Lots of things go into that to try to estimate this as accurately as possible. We are always using machine learning to automate incident resolution. So you can imagine in the UK, basically everybody has gas in comparison to Germany, where there's oil heating as well, for example. So we have dozens of millions of customers. So things happen all the time. Automated incident resolution is very important, and that's where machine learning comes into play. And we have been using that successfully.
And Frank, so just now, because of it's such a topic in the news right now with these gas prices going through the roof, tripling, quadrupling, are you now doing something a little bit more experimental, right, in some of those algorithms? Because I can imagine that this is not a tried and tested sort of phase that you're in right now, meaning that you have a steady supply and demand equation that you're dealing with here. You've got a lot of fluctuations. How are you dealing with that?
We built a task force to deal with that. And it is a very sensitive topic, so I can't go into the details. But what we do is we help customers switch in case of this was necessary because of the increasing gas market prices.
Interesting, very interesting.
But that leads me to the question, and you've been saying what you've been doing. What interesting innovations are you working on in the moment?
Yeah, innovation comes in different packages, right? So firstly, there is a necessary requirement to continue delivering the rich feature functionality that is needed in existing investments, right, that many of our customers have made. So for instance, at Sapphire earlier this year, we announced the marketplace, where we are looking to introduce more of a data marketplace concept. So you can have validated and verified data sources that you can connect with. We have workforce planning, which is another great example of building on the foundations of end-to-end planning scenarios that our customers are expecting to achieve. So everything from supply chain to workforce planning, of course, financial planning. We're seeing a big emergence, right, where cross-planning becomes an incredibly important requirement. But in addition to that, we have a very vast portfolio of existing products. Some of them, of course, seeded from the on-premise world, but we also have a large number of new cloud native services, whether that's Data Warehouse Cloud, HANA Cloud, Data Intelligence, of course, our Analytics Cloud. And the goal is that we want to have a single unified experience, right? Both from a consumption point of view, but also from an architectural point of view. So that's one of the big things that's driving our development organization right now is really the manifestation of all those services coming together, making it easy to drive those use cases, those high value use cases that our customers are building out. But at the source of all the information that they want to get to, of course, is a lot of it's SAP content. So how do we open up the arteries of all SAP applications and allow that data to flow freely and allow you to be able to bring that content and essentially contextualize that content even with your third party or additional content that may be out there as well. So there's a lot going on, lot to process, but exciting times at SAP. From my side. Yeah, and also maybe just I know you're a consumer and you've been working, of course, through the mentors for a number of years. Maybe just from a quick snapshot point of view from your side, when you look at the broader market and you take a look at sort of experimenting as a part of a community out there, what sort of things would you guide SAP on? Specific things that we need to be mindful about, right? Like things that we should make sure that we're thinking about front of mind.
Oh, that is a really good question because, I'm the SAP Mentor Topic Lead for SAP Data Intelligence, and we use SAP Data Intelligence at Corella in the moment to strengthen some of our data flow processes. And what is really important is to make the distinction between databases and really big data. So historically, we had this mind of, replicating the data into the application that needs it. So we have one of the biggest industry solutions utilities in the UK, for example. And traditionally, we would have replicated the data into that database because otherwise the application wouldn't work. Now, SAP Data Intelligence has the ambition to process data in situ because big data can't be replicated by definition, because it cannot even be stored in a database, because all the database overhead wouldn't make it work. It's too big for that. I mean, it would be too slow. It would be impractical. So you have data lakes, for example, where one missing item isn't important. It's more statistical analysis of the data, for example. And what I'm seeing sometimes is that data intelligence is positioned kind of in both ways: in situ data processing and data intelligence and machine learning, but also some replication features. And I think we have to be very clear when replication is the right thing to do and when in situ. And that is a mind shift, I think, because many modern applications don't need the data in their own database. They can work on it in situ. So, for example, for some of our data services, we let our customers model their required, call it reports. And when they run them through an API, they come to data intelligence, and then data intelligence fetches the data without ever replicating it. So for me, it's a bit important to, perhaps you have to find a clear positioning. You know, when is it replication? When is it in situ processing? That would be really important in my point of view.
Yeah, no, Frank, thank you for sharing that. And of course, I read your blog, right? So it gave a similar sort of definition as what you described there. But, you know, it's interesting as you describe the in situ, or let's call it consolidated summary of data, right? So the consolidated value of data. And then as and when architecturally, and it makes sense, right, from a latency perspective, sometimes you need to have that near real-time access. And therefore, you know, maybe making a federated access rather than perhaps even consolidating or replicating data unnecessarily. So I think it's very clear that software architectures and landscapes themselves have to evolve in order to be able to deal with those specific use case requirements. And eventual consistency is also aspects, you know, that are important as well, right? So if you know that you can look to do an approximate query and you can get to data when you need to, but it may not be 100% accurate, meaning up to date, that's actually good enough for some use cases. So maybe Frank, just to bookend this from an overall architectural perspective, you know, when you look at the low latency requirements and you take a look at some of the data intelligence services that are there, if you were to give one piece of advice to the community, right, around maybe landscape kind of assertions that you should be making, what would that be from your side?
So, I mean, there is a tendency to the cloud, which has increased during the pandemic, because that more easily allows the data to be accessed, you know, from anywhere, basically. That could be achieved on premise, but that is a bit more difficult because the access would have to be managed by yourselves. I think, as you say, I mean, services like the HANA Cloud Services for Replication Server, therefore, make sense in some instances, especially once you will have to move your data from on-premise to the cloud for the first time. So we are doing this as well, and we are building a big data platform in Azure. And there is no magic. So at one point in time, we have to migrate the data. And there it is very important to have the right network infrastructure into place. So I just got a network architect starting in my team, because the network cannot be underestimated in those times. Cloud sounds nice, but it has to be accessed, and that is the network. So my advice would be, have a cloud strategy, be aware of the network implications, and then use cloud native services as much as possible is my strategy. That could reduce the complexity and the number of third-party solutions that's needed to run such an environment. So we could end up and we are in a simplified landscape that is cheaper to run and, more important to us, more flexible, so we can get data services quicker and more reliably to the market.
And Frank, that's very sound advice. Thank you for sharing that. And I think the sound bite there really is to keep the hybrid nature of data, making sure that you don't go down an exclusive path and then exclude certain data, right, from the scenarios that you need to support. And, you know, since you described that you have a new network engineer joining your team, maybe on that same point, if you look at the market in general, and as you look at these aspiring new data professionals coming into the market, what's your advice to them? I mean, you clearly went through an academic path, you arrived at the destination that you're at, which is, very, very good. What would you give maybe a younger version of yourself advice today, and those who are upcoming enthusiasts who want to become professionals in our market, in our industry? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think the demand for data science will further increase over the years. So I think if somebody has an interest in that, that would be a really good career aspiration. And yeah, I dipped into that a little bit, and background in theoretical computer science and statistics helps, as we touched on, big data performance and a lot of statistics going on in big data. As you said, it's more than trends. It's not, it doesn't have to be 100% correct. That would help. It's not absolutely necessary, but for everybody wanting to venture into this area, knowing that they would have to learn a little bit about that. And a really good starting point, I would recommend the Open SAP course, Getting Started with Data Science, edition 2021 by Stuart Clarke. I did that and I really liked it. And I redid some of the examples in data intelligence. He does it with another system called Orange, and I posted that. And I liked it, and I liked the responses. So yeah, that would be my advice. Get your hands on so that you understand what it's about, because it is a complex topic, but it is manageable.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. And I'm sure you'll inspire many to want to go down that path. It's clearly to see you're very passionate about this domain, and I couldn't agree more. Data science is one of those disciplines that's going to be more and more in demand in the future. So let me maybe summarize here. Firstly, thanking you for your time today, Frank. It's really exciting to see and hear what you're doing. Also, for all the mentors out there, thank you very much for the continued support that you give our community. I look forward to engaging with you all, hopefully physically soon. But until that time, I hope you're all safe and well, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irfan.